Here we go. Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Braincast number 7. This is the podcast of the Neurogenesis Project, brought to you by myself, Dr. Sean Orr, and my partner, Dr. Drew Edwards. And we're really glad that you could come in today and join in to hear us talk about all things brain, cognition, mood, etc. For those of you who are new to the Neurogenesis Project, we are a group of neuroscientists who are clinically oriented and trying to help people to imagine a better life and create better brain function through the strategies that we bring to them on a clinical basis. And we're just really interested in talking about brain function and cognition and the emerging neuroeconomy, as we call it. This exciting new time that's bringing all sorts of turbulence and chaos to the world right now. So for those of you who've joined us before, and I certainly would encourage you to like and subscribe, and please feel free to check out our previous videos. You'll see links below to our guests today and to topics that we bring up. We will also include links and give you references. But wanted to bring in here a good friend and a colleague, Dr. I keep calling him Dr. Doug Wilder. Doug, I'm going to just give you an honorary degree because I keep calling you Doc. You in?
I'm in, yes. Great. Dr. Doug here.
Looks like we're having some bandwidth limitations here, so bear with us where that gets caught up. We've had, this has been nothing but a great learning experience in technical stuff. I like to say I'm just a simple country neurologist, and here I'm having to be a technician at the same time. So for those of you who are tuning in, we're just getting some band. Gotta love it, man. Let's give it a chance to catch up here. Doug, are you with me?
I am with you. Yes. Sounds like this is brain surgery. One of those inside jokes, right? So, I'm looking forward to this. This show is going to be amazing. Oh, and there you are.
There we go.
Yeah.
I think we're caught up.
All right.
Thank you for your patience, my friend. You know, I'm going to hire your tech people to do all the wizardry when all's said and done. Hopefully get some edits to this when we're done. But thank you for joining us today, Doug. Those of you who don't know Mr. Wilder, he is a leading executive coach. He works with very high functioning executives, attorneys, people who are at the peak of their career and maybe are struggling here and there with one or two things that they're trying to. And boy, it looks like we're still suffering some bandwidth problems here.
Okay. You can hear me. Yes. So he's going to catch up. Sean's going to catch up on the bandwidth, but I think this is multi-state because I think Dr. Sean is coming in from Georgia, so that's what makes this all very interesting. So if he's not going to come in, then I'm going to run the whole show. Do you want me to run the whole show? Which I love doing because I love running shows. So I think what we're going to be talking about is de-stress today and de-stress tools. I'm writing a book on de-stress tools that I've been using for years and years, actually, probably about 15, 20 years I've been talking to my clients about de-stress tools. So it's something that's near and dear to me, and so what I'm doing is I'm interviewing some of the clients that have used the de-stress tools over the years and finding out how they developed them, how they used them, and where it goes from here. So so the question is we're going to have technical difficulties to be able to put on this show. So it's because this is going to be fascinating. We have a guest, Dr. Vincent Farrar, who's a doctor of chiropractic. There he is, Dr. Vin. Yay,
Okay.
we made it. Super. It looks like we're the only ones on right now because Dr. Sean is having some problems with the technical difficulties. So how are you today?
I am doing great. I'm excited for this. The new problems of 2021.
Yes, technical difficulties. That's right. We thought there were technical difficulties back in the 50s and 60s. I know, before you were born, when TV was just on, yeah, and they would have technical difficulties. So we're still toying with that, but I think we can jump right in and have a discussion, and then I'm sure that Dr. Sean Orr, neurologist, is either listening or can catch up with us. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in and start asking you some questions, if that's all right with you.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great.
Good. Yeah. So before we talk about de-stress tools, can you tell us a little bit about you and your business?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I am Dr. Vincent Farrar. My wife and I have a practice in Jacksonville Beach called Slancha Chiropractic. And really
slowly. So what's the name of the practice?
Slancha Chiropractic.
Slancha. Yes. Do you want to spell that for everybody?
Yeah. So it's Slainte. If you're Irish, you'll recognize the word. My wife is a leprechaun, and the word actually means to your health in Irish or in Gaelic. And so that's the name of the practice, because that's what we do. And we help bring families to their health. We work with struggling couples who want to conceive radiantly healthy babies. My wife works on that end of the practice, and I work on the opposite end, helping stress babies in order to eat, sleep, and poop with ease. And I also work with 3-year-olds whose parents do not want them to just wait to grow out of whatever struggles they are going through. And so we have a huge family practice, and it's absolutely amazing. It's amazing.
Good. Excellent. Well, there he is.
Okay. Where there's a will, there's a way. I think I'm borrowing somebody else's Wi-Fi right now. Sorry about that. Okay. Dr. Vin, nice to see you.
Oh, that's perfect. It's nice to meet you, Dr. Sean.
Thank you. Doug, you're a professional. I know you brought him in with much aplomb and pomp and circumstance, didn't you?
Yes, but we've already made the introduction, and he's already told us about Slancha, his practice, and it was interesting. I was telling you about that the other day, Dr. Sean, and talking about the Slancha, and you knew exactly what it meant in Gaelic. I mean, whoa!
to your health. Aaron go raw. I'm not Irish. I mean, So, well, good. Well, it's very exciting to meet you. We, Doug, as I was trying to introduce early on, for those who are joining this Braincast and don't know him, Doug is a peak performance coach, and he does a lot of things. So that's probably making it oversimplified, but he rescues people's careers. People who are high functioning executives. He works with a lot of attorneys. When they're really struggling to perform, he goes in and gives them a lifeline for leaders. And so, but he does a lot of good leadership coaching and does a lot of business coaching. And he was very excited with your practice with Slancha and where it's going. And we thought it would be nice to showcase your practice today, talk about challenges that you face. All of us who are clinically oriented have our set of challenges, don't we? But now that we're moving into this exciting new time in history when we have a lot of tools to help people more than we ever did before, many opportunities. So I wanted to hear what Doug has to ask of you, and how stress plays a role, how you mitigate stress, and I will turn it back over to you, Doug, to let you take it and run with it.
Okay, great. So I want to just start off with, how did we meet? What was how did that come about?
Yeah, so my wife had met Doug during our networking meeting, and she said that Doug works with people who are just like you, and you need to go meet with Doug, because at that point, this was probably 6 months ago, maybe 8 months ago now, and at that point we had just had, so we had a 1-year-old, and then we had another baby 6 months old at that time, and so we had 2 kids under 2 while running a practice. We just started. This is our 4th year in business, and so there was definitely a lot of stress in the middle of a pandemic to add on to it. And so, yeah, so there were a lot of things that were showing up. And the biggest thing that she wanted for me, and Doug, I know we talked about this in our first meeting, is she said that I know there's a better version of you out there. And she said, I would just meet with Doug because, again, he said that he works with people just like you. And I know that he can help you find that better version of yourself so we can start seeing it more, because I wasn't truly reaching my potential because of all the stress that was going on at home with the family, in the office, in the practice, again, just because there's just so much stuff. And yeah, Doug has been nothing short of amazing with all the tools and all this stuff. So I'm excited to dive deep today with the de-stress tools.
Wow. Good. Finding a better version of you. I love that. That's going to go on. That'll be my new tagline. So let's dive a little bit deeper into what were the difficulties you were having? What were the biggest challenges causing the stress, and maybe some symptoms?
Absolutely, yeah. So with practice, as I'm sure you know, Dr. Sean, and the thing that I didn't realize going into school and becoming a chiropractor was the fact that you don't just get to help people, you also have to run a business. And so running a business comes with its own circumstances that you don't really get trained in. And so you have to run a business, you have to be able to take care of the people that you're serving. And then also at home, if you have a spouse, I had a wife and I had 2 kids. And so the responsibilities were piling on. And I was feeling like I just wasn't able to keep up with everything, because typically 5 years ago, before I got married, before I had kids, before I had a practice, I was able to handle the stressors of life better because I had more time to myself where I could rest and recharge. But now, as everything was getting pushed to the limits, I had to figure out, how do I keep all these things managed while still being able to take care of myself and taking care of a family and all that stuff. And so, yeah, it was really, really stressful in our relationship. It was stressful with the kids. The practice was stressful, again, in the middle of a pandemic, trying to keep this office afloat while also having 2 team members that work for us, knowing that the work that we produce is it's our responsibility for them and their families to eat. And so there's just that ton of pressure and stress. And so just not being able to handle that well, we weren't doing as best as we could, definitely as a marriage. And we just kind of saw that trickle down all the way into raising our kids, being stressed out with that, and also being stressed out with the practice, again, in the middle of the pandemic, trying to do everything we could to just hold on to keep everything running as best as we can. And again, that stress just trickled into all of those other areas as well.
Wow. Yeah, and it certainly can be. And I know that a lot of people who are listening and watching this Braincast are experiencing the same thing. I know we've all, at least I've just experienced the same kind of stress of balancing everything, not being able to keep up. Wow. Yeah. So what do you think transformed you? What were the concepts perhaps that best worked for you, and how'd that work?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that we talked about, Doug, was the emotional bank account, and just pouring into the relationship with my wife first, knowing what her needs were, because when I started addressing those and just taking action, I think that's another thing, Doug, that we talk about all the time, just like taking action and moving towards that better future. And so as I just intentionally did things that would fill my wife's bank account, our relationship started to get better, because naturally when I start serving her like she wants to be served, and that's the important part, then she's also going to want to reciprocate that. And so it just, when that, and this is just a motto that we really live our life by, is that everything in our life is going to be a reflection of our relationship. And so once our relationship was improved, then again, everything else trickled down effect. Our relationships with our kids were less stressed because there was less stress between us. And because of that, then that didn't, our relational stress didn't transfer into the practice. And so our practice started taking off like crazy because, again, we were in better space, so we can help our team better. We can be better leaders for our team, but also we can be better clinicians and better doctors for the people that we take care of, because we're fully present to serve and we're not worried about all the outside stuff that is going on in our life. We're able to be present and focus so we can best care for the people that we take care of.
Amazing. Would you say that the changes that you made were unilateral? In other words, it was completely up to you. You weren't expecting Dr. Bridget to change particularly. You weren't requiring it, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just what our motto is in our relationship is it's both 100%. Nothing's ever 50-50. And the thing that I had control over was my 100%. And so, yeah, naturally, I didn't have any expectations of her because, again, just she was the one that started all of our conversations, Doug. And I think it was a huge part and a huge glimpse into what she saw of me. And I think that was, again, one of the big things is perspective, is that she wasn't telling me that I should go see you, Doug, or she was going to leave me. It was, I know that there's a better version of you out there. I'm not mad at you. I'm not frustrated with you. I just know that you can do more and you can be more. And so I want you to try this avenue to see if we can just go into that potential and really start taking full advantage of everything I had to offer. And she already did her 100%. She made the opportunity, she created it. And so all I knew that I had to do was just be better. And if I was better, and if I showed up better, then I knew that naturally she's going to do the same on her own because she's amazing. And that's just who she is. And she is always, or pretty close to always, at her 100%. Because that's just who she is in life. She's got ridiculous energy. She's the life of the party, and she's always showing up for everybody around her. And so that's where I knew that if I had just the perception that she had of me was different, instead of, I don't think there's something wrong with you. I just know that there's something else more that you can do. And so again, that perspective shift changed everything. And I think that was my need from her, was to just make this become a reality.
Boy, that's inspirational. So what particular tools, I know you mentioned the emotional bank account, that's one. Were there any other tools that you found helpful?
Yeah, I think a big one that we were just talking about yesterday, Doug, was vision, and seeing what does your ideal future look like? Because then once you have that ideal future, then you can determine what are the next steps that you need to take to make that to become a reality. Because I often think we get to the point where we just don't know what the next step is to take. And that's really when you feel overwhelmed. And that just is going to lead to stress. And if you can just see what your ideal future is and then just make action steps towards getting there, that's been a huge thing for me, because that applies to every aspect of life. It applies to our business. Where do we want to go in 5 years? Where do we want to go in 10 years? But also for our kids, because now we have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. What do we want them to think about a marriage relationship when they are looking for a partner? Or what do we want them to think about how they trust or they interact with people? What is that going to look like when they're 15 and 16? And so we can see what this ideal future is. And then we could just literally just go through that and say, with that as our lens, are the actions that we're taking getting us closer to that goal or further away? And when you have that, then you can then decipher, these are the best steps that we need to take right now to get where we want to go.
Yeah, very powerful. And I think you'll find that these same principles will apply when your kids do get to be age 15. And you start asking them, okay, so what is your ideal future? And particularly during the late teens, early 20s, children have a tendency to become misguided by external forces, because they'll no longer have the parental forces or guidance. And so then what happens is, if you can get them to, at an early age, to declare what is an ideal future, not that it can't change, but at least get them heading in the right direction, that'll keep them on track. So I'm glad that you're adopting this early on. I can just imagine the talks that you're going to have at the dinner table with the kids as they grow up. Sensational. Good. Were there any other tools that you thought were helpful?
Yeah, I think, again, another one that my wife is great at always reminding me is stress is going to happen if your perception doesn't meet your reality. And I think oftentimes she likes just kind of jab me in the side as we're driving, and I'm in the left lane, and there's somebody who's either turning, and they go, it's a 35-mile-an-hour zone, and they go about 15 miles an hour before they get off to their turn. I'm like, can we do that a little bit faster? She's like, well, what happens if they have a wedding cake and they don't want to go too fast because the cake is going to turn over? I was like, that's great, but I've got somewhere where I need to go, and I don't have time to slow down for wedding cake drivers. So so I think it's just, or even I think one of the other ones, she says, like, if we're driving on the highway and someone's going 50 miles an hour, she's like, what if that's an old lady who's not driving, but she's driving her husband to go to the hospital because he's having a heart attack? And she's like, and she said, you just put your feet in other people's shoes and see how you then will change your reality. And I think also, again, in our marriage, what we often bring to the table is expectations, and that is just another perception. And if our expectations aren't met, and I think that's another thing that was happening in our marriage when we first started coaching, Doug, was just these unspoken expectations that we bring into our marriage, into life, that if the other person is not meeting them, even though they don't know what they are, stress increases. And so changing the perception changes absolutely everything.
Right. Wow. So any other tools that you found helpful?
I think those are the big ones that I use fairly regularly. Yeah.
Great. Good. So how's it worked since? I mean, so you learned the tools now. Now it's been several months later. Are you still? Sounds like you're still able to use them, particularly with the driver or the passenger next to you.
Yes, absolutely.
She's doing a good job keeping you focused.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, and the coolest part since having these tools, and one of the first things that happened, I think, in the first month or so of coaching, Doug, I was like, man, things are going so great. And then one week, I just feel like I'm stuck in a rut. And you said, well, if you're stuck in a rut, what do you have to do to get out of the rut? And you said, just stand up. And so the tools have given me the opportunity to, when I have those moments and those opportunities where I see things aren't going as well as I know they can be, what can I do to get things back on track? And then I go back to the tools, and I try to keep them in the forefront of my mind. But just as life comes on, we get blinders to what's happening. And then when we sit back and reflect, we're like, man, that could have been different. That could have been better. And I guess that's another tool that I didn't say, the should versus could, where if I say these things could be better, then it takes all the pressure off, because it doesn't mean that it should have been better. It just could have been better. And I can now use these tools to say, this is how I can have a strategy to say, even though I'm in stress right now, even though things aren't going how the way that I want them to go, I know that I have tools in my toolbox to say, this is how I'm going to change this and start moving back towards the ideal future.
Amazing. So if you were to see someone with similar challenges that you experienced early on, what might you tell him or her? I think
call Doug. Here's the number.
Good answer.
He's a guy.
Very good answer. I love that answer.
Yeah. And I think even when I was telling our team about this Braincast, they were saying, because one of the big things that we talk about in our office is how getting adjusted can help your body handle the stress response better. And one of our team members said, well, if you can't get adjusted, what are some other things that you can do to handle that stress response? And I said, I mean, all of Doug's tools are designed for that. And so I went over, just like, again, changing the thought from perception doesn't have to equal reality. If you just change your perception, then your stress will naturally start to decrease, and just really giving them the tools, the same tools that you gave me, because again, it is life changing when you can have a strategy, when you know things aren't going right, instead of just diving deeper into that hole, you can pull yourself out by starting to stand up, and it starts with those tools.
Yeah. You were telling me about, you were just mentioning about how you're doing the adjusting, which is lessening stress. Tell us about how that works. What are you doing there?
Yeah, so what we look for in our office is it's called a vertebral subluxation, and that happens when the stress that the body is under is greater than the body's ability to handle that stress. And so what happens is that stress in the body results in tension. Tension in the spine means that the spine isn't going to move as well, and things really start to go down from there. Because if your body is not moving well, that means that the stress in your body is going to increase. And so again, we take care of from couples who are trying to conceive, who are not able to, and again, stress through that. If they can't conceive and they're stressed in the relationship, by getting them adjusted, it allows their body to handle the stress better. Because I was telling you, Doug, the past couple of weeks have been a little bit more stressful because our practice is just growing like crazy. And so what I told my wife is I just need to start getting adjusted more, because there's going to be more stress in our life. And really, chiropractic, most people think chiropractic, it's almost like 2,000 years ago, which is like bone thing. You're just going to push on bones. And most people think, and they know of chiropractic for back pain and neck pain, but really what chiropractors do is they work on the nervous system and optimizing the nerve system function. And so if your nervous system is functioning better, then that's going to change how you perceive the world. And so just like we were talking about with perception, if your perception doesn't equal your reality, you're going to have stress. And your body has to tell your brain what is happening. That's how you perceive everything, is through your nerve system. And chiropractically, we know if you have a vertebral subluxation, your nervous system is going to be stressed. And so essentially what I tell all of our parents is that the birthing process as a baby is, as their head is used as a battering ram to get out of mom, that's a stressful thing for that baby. And oftentimes when the baby comes out, the doctor has to pull on the baby's head and the neck, oftentimes twisting it to get the shoulders out. And a lot of times there's a ton of tension that's put on the baby's head and neck. And Dr. Sean, you know that our brains aren't fully developed at birth. We need to grow into our brains, and that happens through perception of your environment. If a baby's environment is stress, they're not going to be in the good parasympathetic rest, relax, and grow and develop mode. They're going to be in sympathetic stress. And that's where we see our babies who can't eat, they can't sleep, they can't poop. And so chiropractically, we come along, we adjust them, take that pressure off of their nervous system. So we change the lens at which they're viewing the world. So then their bodies can grow and develop optimally, just like they're designed to.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. So from a neurological standpoint, Dr. Sean, what are your thoughts on this? And you may have some questions of Dr. Vin also.
Oh, no, yeah, I do. I appreciate that. Thanks, Doug. I'm very excited to see this relationship and how it's developed, because it's obviously very beneficial. You know, I have a strong belief that coaching is such a useful modality, because you're focused on the potentialities. You know, you're focused on what could be. It's a very positive, uplifting, empowering process to go through, and it's obvious. You radiate confidence, and can you just kind of compare or contrast really how you were before? I mean, you were what? Were you burned out? Were you fatigued, tired? How was it manifesting in you physically?
All the above, yeah. And I think the biggest thing physically, I think that's where the adjusting kind of came along to supplement, and I was able to get better. But yeah, just energy levels weren't always the greatest. Focus and concentration was hard, especially at the end of shifts. And then even more so after working 8 or 10 or 12 hours and going home and trying to be a father to 2 kids while you're exhausted. It shows up and it permeates everywhere. And I think, I think depending on the person that you would ask, it all kind of showed up differently. But I think the biggest thing that it boils down to, Dr. Sean, is just the not being the best version of myself possible in all aspects of life, with marriage and kids and even being a chiropractor.
So, you know, the thought that comes, thank you for sharing that. And the thought that comes to mind is that, you know, it takes courage to be vulnerable about these things. In healthcare, as the people on the front line taking care of people, we're expected to be showing up and 100% for every one of our patients, right?
Yep.
And I really like what you said, this idea that marriage is not a 50-50 deal. It's a 100% deal.
Yeah.
Right? But then so is patient care.
Oh, yeah.
And so is practice management.
Yep.
But so, you know, who can always be 100%? Nobody. Yep. But, you know, we do develop burnout. And, you know, I just saw a statistic yesterday that I thought was very interesting. And the article I was watching was about young people who are in tech, high-tech jobs, and something like 65% of people who are working for big tech firms are burning out.
Oh.
And yet they have every single perk rolled out right in front of them, right? And so, if we look at cognitive capacity or the energy to get things done as a balance, we have to constantly be nurturing our brain function. And if we're withdrawing more than we're depositing, it is a recipe for burnout. And the problem with burnout, and for those of you who are new to this concept, burnout really is not a clinical diagnosis, but it is made up of a bunch of different clinical components. And one of the very first things that happens when somebody's burning out is that they lose awareness. They lose mindfulness of their own state. And this is very common, especially younger people in the industry who are showing up on day one, and they have to do a job that they didn't do before, and they are having to bring their energy, right? So stage one of burnout is one of increased energy output. We're making more meetings than we used to. We're making bigger commitments, having to show up and fulfill those commitments. And where do we start to cut? Well, sleep goes, right? That's easy to trim back a couple hours, work through the night. What else goes? Exercise. Yeah, that goes out. Okay, I don't have time to get to the gym today. And then what happens? Good, healthy, nutrition. I'll eat that pile of, chicken nuggets that some rep brought into the office today instead of my salad. It's very, very easy. And then before you know it, your brain is swimming in a vat of sewage, and it's really hard to think straight. And that's where we get into stage two of burnout. Stage two is when we're now starting to feel tired and we're withdrawing. We're showing up late to work. Did you find yourself doing any of this, withdrawing, hiding out in the bathroom, starting to feel like you needed to just get away from the people because it's too many demands?
I think you might have had a camera that was recording my life, because you're crushing it so far.
So that, that's common, right? So stage two is that we've withdrawn more than we've deposited, and now we're starting to exhibit some resentment for other people. The patients become the enemy. As we get into stage three, then we reject what we do. We get extremely resentful, withdrawn from the people that we love. We abandon family activities. We start to make mistakes, big mistakes, errors of judgment. We allow ourselves to do things we wouldn't normally do. We cross lines that we shouldn't. It can become a real problem. And the real difficulty with stage three, especially for a leader like yourself, is that oftentimes people around us see it, but they're too afraid to confront it. And it takes somebody with great courage, and it sounds like your wife is a courageous person, to be able to come to you and say, you can be doing better here. Let's start to bring in Doug and rescue you from this situation, right? So Doug, when you first met, did you think that you were working on that nice right side of the curve where it's all about optimization, enhancement, things are looking rosy, life is good, let's just see how much we can get out of things? Or were you kind of in that rescue recovery mode with Dr. Vin?
Well, Dr. Vin is one of the speediest, that's not the right word, but he's a quick study. And so he, whereas he might have been in, I don't know, probably not stage three, but maybe stage two, as you describe it, he wasn't showing it. Like most people who are in stage two, I don't think even show their worst side particularly to a stranger. He very quickly, because I started giving him tools right away, and he instantly saw those. And by the next week, because we were meeting weekly, by the next week, he was already seeing results. I mean, yeah. I think I started seeing results like within 15 to 30 minutes of talking to him, because he was saying, "Oh yeah, okay, I can do that. Right, great, okay, good." He's writing down all these notes, and so yeah, it was rather phenomenal. And so by the next meeting, he was already way ahead of where he was previously, and furthermore, as the weeks progressed maybe within a couple months. It was just phenomenal change. And,
Well,
and it was noticed by Dr. Bridget, by the way, and she gave a testimonial at a Chamber of Commerce event. That's on my website, by the way, where she was just saying how amazing her husband had become. Not that he wasn't amazing before, but boy, he became that better version of himself.
Okay, so it sounds like this is a growing experience for you. You needed some rescuing, pulling out of a nosedive, but thank goodness you're young and you hadn't probably entered into stage 3 of burnout, which is where we really sit in our own resentment. Resentment is such a very toxic emotion. Resentment is kind of unspoken anger, and anger is the next door neighbor to fear. And I think when people get into stage 3 of burnout, and it sounds like you pulled out before that, which is great, but it can be really hard. Sometimes things just end up breaking before somebody gets out of stage 3 of burnout. And sometimes they don't get out. We see, we lose 2 medical school classes worth of doctors every year in this country to suicide. Sometimes the best option in somebody's mind is it's better to take their own life than it is to actually try to undo the damage, which is hard to understand, right, from the outside. But that resentment and anger and trauma can just be so deep that it's really hard to pull out. So
if I could just jump in there, I think part of that level 3 is definitely there too. Just because Doug, we were talking about this yesterday, where I feel like oftentimes it's easier to and I'm sure you go through it too, Dr. Sean, was just like the patients that stories stick with you the most are usually the ones that don't get the results that you expect them to, or even and I was telling Doug, just like some of this, most of the stuff we see in our practice is nothing short of miraculous. And oftentimes I don't even sit there to process the stories that people are telling me. It's because there's all this other stuff that's happening, instead of just allowing that goodness to kind of seep through everything. I often have a tendency to let those other negative, less positive stories really take over and just start controlling that internal dialogue.
It's great that you're aware of that, though. Yeah. A term that we use a lot in our practice is anosognosia. And for the viewers, this is a term that we'll often see if somebody's had a traumatic brain injury or a stroke and a particular part of their brain is injured. They lose the awareness of their lack of awareness. But it can happen in burnout. The blindness to your own blindness becomes a problem, right? And so often we're going through the routine of the day and we've got a million demands on us. Taking a moment to breathe and just get mindful of our state, pay attention to what we're feeling, and also revel in that miracle that just happened right in front of you and let it sink in there and feel good. That's a great way of bringing back awareness to our bodies, to our mind, to our soul, so that we can add to the bank account, make that deposit. I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I think that so often it is that, we're tuned as humans to look for the snake that's about to bite us, the lion that's about to jump out of the, savannah and eat us. We're constantly on default. And if our frontal lobes are stressed and we're burning out, guess what? That limbic brain in the back is just always on. It doesn't stop. So we have to modulate that. And that's how getting aware and being mindful can make such a difference. So Doug, do you think this is a loaded question, but do you think that your strategies then are mindfulness strategies?
Yes. Completely. Because, I don't go into, I look at sometimes 4 levels of de-stress, and the first 3 don't really work really well. The third one's pretty good, which is to be aware of your body and all the things, get the right amount of sleep, all those things are important. But some people are doing those things and still not able to, uh, uh, and they're still getting stressed out, even though they're doing all the right things for their body. They're drinking lots of water. They are getting all the sleep they need, and the yoga and all those things are terrific. But what we're finding is that if even still they can get stressed out. So the mindset then is my major focus. How do you change the way you look at things? And I imagine that is from a neurological standpoint. What did you say? Going from the hippocampus to the frontal lobes? Is that? I'm not a brain.
You're on the right track. Yeah. We want to shift from our limbic system to our frontal lobes, right? So, but being aware, and I like to recommend certain strategies. Forgiveness, for example, very powerful. And this is not to get religious or anything, but to forgive evokes a part of our prefrontal cortex up here. We're forgiving. We're giving something away that we normally wouldn't if we were in the mode of retribution. Somebody steals my squirrel. I can't eat today. I'm going to punch him in the face and take my squirrel back. I'm not going to wait for the tribal elders to adjudicate 3 weeks what happens with my squirrel. I'll be dead by then. So, so if I forgive that, though, that takes thoughtfulness. It's a frontal lobe strategy. And if you start to forgive little things like the bedpost when you stub your toe, it sounds kind of cheesy, but it works. You practice this, and after a while, instead of slamming that bedpost back and breaking your wrist, you're going to find that life is better. So I'm curious, maybe as we get close to the end of the hour here, Dr. Vin, as you started to practice these mindfulness strategies, Doug Wilder's de-stress strategies and ways of changing your perception so that you would change your reality, how did you, if you saw a change, did you see a change with the way that you're interacting with your patients?
Oh, yeah, 1,000%. And I think it comes from a clarity perspective, just like you were saying, Dr. Sean, just without those other stressors, just constantly walking around with them from room to room to room, just letting them go, getting them off your shoulders, just leaving them at the front door. There's no way it couldn't change the interaction, because it just makes everything so much more free. You can walk into a room without any expectations, without anything going on, anything weighing you down, taking your mind off of what you're supposed to be doing. And again, even just being able to serve better through that by just getting rid of all the stuff that just kind of blurs your vision. And the hard part is oftentimes, and the same thing is true with chiropractic, is just oftentimes these things are just running in the background and you don't really notice until it gets bad enough. And then, I'm sure other people around you are seeing them. But when you can get rid of that, and in chiropractic we have a saying, just like getting rid of the husks, just shedding the husks. You get rid of that, you can just show up more freely, and it changes every interaction with everybody in life, just because you change that perception from, I'm not in stress, I'm not in sympathetic fight or flight. Like, I can sit here and have a relationship with this person, because we're just more open to that. Like, this person didn't just steal my squirrel. We can sit here and start working together to build a better future for everybody that we get to meet.
You're reminding me of a moment I had about 12 years ago. My wife and daughter showed up to surprise me for lunch at clinic. And I was up to my eyeballs in alligators. I was getting calls from the ER, stroke patients. I had probably 15 patients left to see from the morning, which I was backed up, and phone calls coming from everywhere. Everybody needed everything now, and I came around the corner, and there they were, and both of them went like, they were so startled. And I must have had this like angry look on my face, which I was completely unaware of. Yeah. And it like terrified my poor daughter for a minute there. She still now will remind me that I look like a wild beast. And this is an environment where you're supposed to be, healing people, bringing the best of you into the room to try to help somebody, right? What does that do to a patient when they're seeing you bursting into the room with an angry face? So I like what you're talking about. So would your advice to colleagues be that when you're about to go into the next room, that you take a moment to check in with yourself?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have a ritual that you do now?
Not necessarily ritual. There's just a cue in my brain software, just with our software, just when you hit spacebar, it blacks out the screen, submits the note, and you hit spacebar, that is done, and we're going to move on to the next room.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things I've noticed that that they're doing over at that practice, Sean, is that they are, Dr. Lego Man over here. They celebrate when each person comes in. They get to put a Lego. Tell us about the Lego situation.
Yeah, so every time a kid gets adjusted, we have a Lego brick wall in our practice, and so you get a Lego brick to put on the wall, and that symbolizes an adjustment that's helping to build that baby's brain, because every adjustment, and again, I was listening to, and I talked to Doug about this yesterday, in preparation for this, I was listening to previous Braincasts, I was like, this conversation is exactly the conversation that we have in practice with the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system and all that stuff. And it's helping to build their brain by giving their brain better information to dictate development in the future. And the kids love it. We're going to have to start adding to the Lego brick wall. We're already out of Lego bricks, so there are more on their way, because the kids are just absolutely loving the whole thing.
I love that. What a nice visual representation of all the people you've helped. Yeah. That's really important, because I think, and so many of my colleagues, have burned out over the years, and I myself had a great little memory of this. Just on Wednesday, I was meeting with somebody who was thinking of joining us as a patient in the practice, and we had a very nice conversation. It was casual, we were friends socially in other areas, and as we were walking out and he had a better understanding of my practice philosophy, he reminded me that about 10 years ago, I took care of his son. And when this happens, it's always embarrassing, right? Like, you take care of 5,000 people and you meet somebody and it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't remember the details. And to make a long story short, without getting into any kind of violations of confidentiality, he's now working as a high-level rocket scientist and launching people into space, the sun. And so, that was a miracle, just to have that loop close, a decade later. And I don't think, it made my day. I walked around with a really light heart and felt great to know that something I did to help him when he was struggling in high school paid off to put him into this rarefied air, so to speak. And we don't give ourselves enough credit for the victories and the successes we have. And, it's very easy to, identify the arrogant doctor and, all the narcissistic stuff that comes with the profession. But if we can learn to be humble and at the same time pat ourselves on the back for those successes, I think it does a lot of good for our soul and helps us to overcome that burnout. So nice work on the Lego wall. That's great. Well, this has been very helpful. I love watching the dynamic between the two of you. It's obvious that you have good rapport as a mentor-mentee, and I just think the world of Doug anyway. So it's always good to just see somebody who he's touched. Do you want to tell us where people can find you, Dr. Vin, and how it's best for them to interface with you?
Absolutely. So our website is slanchachiropractic.com. There's a bunch of information on there. We have a budding Instagram page as well. It's just Slancha Chiropractic there. There's a whole bunch of information. You can call it through the website. You can find all sorts of ways to get in touch with us. But yeah, if you want to learn more about what we do, our website has a whole bunch of information, and our Instagram page is starting to go crazy too.
Great. And Doug, I'm popping your website up there for those who are looking for a lifeline for leaders and need to get instant access to you. You're very available. Do you want to tell people how they can best get in touch with you?
wildersuccess.com, or they can call me, my cell phone, 904-705-4567. And I'm excited because I've got a rapidly growing business myself, and just having a ball with making sure that people are happy in business and succeeding.
So any last words of wisdom you'd like to close on?
So yes, take good care of your brain, take good care of your body, and be happy. Dr. Ben, do you have any last closing thoughts?
No, I think the big one would be just find your ideal future and go after it.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today, Dr. Vin. And
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Doug, I appreciate your constant good work on for folks here. And for those of us who are looking for ways to imagine a better brain and design a better mind for themselves, you can follow us at the Neurogenesis Project and popping up our website here. Dr. Drew Edwards is on vacation this next week, and I was very tempted to say, come on in anyways, but when we're taking vacation, we should take vacation, right? And why don't we practice what we preach? And I'm delighted that he's going to be reconnecting with old friends and family and just resting his frontal cortex so he can come back stronger than ever. So, well, thank you very much. You all have a wonderful day. And for those of you who are joining in new, please like and subscribe and tag into these good folks. Look forward to Braincast number 8 coming up next week. All right, y'all have a great day. Take care.
Great. Thanks.